I'm making a container with a flip lid. Now I've added hinges before, but only added the hinge pin after firing. This time it goes in before it hits the kiln. A little riskier, but if it works, it could change the way I make hinge lids. I use 1.5 kilos of clay for the base and 900 for the lid. I start with the lid. If you're interested in more original functional projects like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel. It motivates us to create more videos. Once centered, I flatten the top of the clay. I bring it out to a little under the final dimension of the lid. I start to form a rim, but I need a little more clay, so I bring some of the clay out from the center into the rim. So now I'm accentuating the undercut. So this is effectively making a flange, and it will fit down into the pot. I compress the lid with a rib. Together with removing water, compressing really does solve many cracking issues. And I smooth the rim with a sponge. And that's it. I trim around the base, measure, and then wire through. And I set aside to dry to leather hard. And now for the base, a pretty simple pot. All I need to do is make sure the dimension of the outer rim is the same dimension as that of the lid. You could do some shaping here, but I'm going to leave mine with straight sides. So I center the clay and then I flatten. I push down into the clay and open out straight across the base. And now I can start to form the walls. I bring the walls up to their final height. And then I check the measurement to make sure the diameter of the base is going to fit the lid. I trim around the base of the pot. And I finish the rim. I wire through and set aside to dry to leather hard. The lid and base are leather hard, so it's time to trim. Now, the lid's a little more complicated. I start by giving the base a bit of a tidy up, so I center and fasten. And I give it a very light trim. Then I smooth the surface with a rib. I still need to cut the flip top into the lid, but I'll trim the base first. I start by centering. I secure to the wheel and I'm ready to trim. And I trim across the base. I trim a little around the foot. And I smooth with a rib. I'm going to mark and cut the flip lid. I've made a template, so I can just mark around the corners. And I'm ready to cut. I can separate the two parts of the lid. I need a gap between the two pieces, so I cut away about half a centimetre all the way around the cutout. If I don't leave this gap, the lid won't hinge properly. I also add a slight bevel to the edge. This just gives a bit of extra clearance. I add the pins to the flip lid. The pins are cut from kanthal wire. Each pin is 3.5 centimeters. I'm using A1 kanthal wire, 2.5 millimeters in diameter. One type of wire that can withstand firing in a kiln. It can fire up to 1350 degrees Celsius and is used in making kiln elements. Now I've made a pad of clay to support the lid as I work on it. So now I have the pins in the flip lid. I need to make a corresponding channel in the lid. The flip lid will hinge from this point. I carve these channels out. I want to give the pins enough room to move easily, especially as the clay might shrink a little. And now I lay the flip lid with the pins on top. I add clay to cover the pins. And I'm taking care not to smush the clay down over the pin. And I repeat this with the other side. Now I don't want to add any strain to these joins. So I flip the lid onto a kiln shelf and I let both parts dry, and then I load into the kiln for a bisque fire. The pieces are out of the kiln and it's time to glaze. The lid is still on the kiln shelf, and this is great. There's no stress placed on the hinge as I move the lid around. So I'm using a brush on glaze, and this is partly for the same reason. The lid can stay flat as it's glazed. The lid and container need 3 coats of this Italian green glaze. And now I glaze the base. I'm going to glaze the inside in a lighter green. So I'm using earthenware glazes, and I've decided on an earthenware firing. This is because of the kanthal wire hinge pin. The lower the firing, the less shrinkage. I don't want the clay to shrink too much around that hinge pin. And I'm being a little conservative with the kanthal wire. Because although it can fire to a very high temperature, it can also still sag at high temperatures. So here's the base and the lid. A hinge lid. And the hinge works. So it's kind of handy in that I can lift the lid and feel. And the lid stays open, so it's really a one-handed operation. And I think it could be handy for keeping things together, like these packs of tea. Or even something boring like storing receipts for tax time. I do have to be careful to close the lid gently, or I feel as if the lid might crack if it's dropped. For more fun hinges, check out my swing top lid. And, as always, happy potting.